Um, Welcome to this episode of On the Front Row. Alex, I'm going to call you Alex all through. We are super excited to have you here and just can't wait to dive into the topic. But before we just go into it, we'll just like to know you, know your background, and just tell us who you are.
Hey, Fulla, thanks for having me today. I really appreciate this chance to have this exciting conversation. Um, I am born and raised in New York City on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And I started my career in investment banking, involved with IPOs and research for publicly traded companies. And then I moved into technology and technology consulting uh, before leaving New York City and going to Europe, where I worked for a series of telecommunications operators like Deutsche Telekom and AT&T Unisource. I also worked for technology hardware manufacturers and software manufacturers, and really enjoyed that shift before going back into investment banking. And then at some point, I got a little bit tired with the sort of telecom, media, and tech world because they really weren't innovating the way that I had hoped, and fell in love with brands. And then had the luck and the pleasure of being able to be accepted and work with big agencies like BBH in London and Springer and Covey in Hamburg, Germany, and was able to combine this idea of a brand as an investment with as well as a brand as a marketing tool. So this mixture of finance and marketing was really exciting. And I'm really very thankful for the people that trusted me, even though being sort of a tech finance guy, being allowed into the advertising and branding world. And then I got a great opportunity to move to China and work for a company called DMG Media, where also we were looking at media investments and bringing foreign brands into the Chinese market and the different kinds of risks and rewards, which used my skill sets. And then eventually I moved over to work with IBM iX in China and Fjord and other digital companies because there were so many cool things with social commerce, and stayed in China for 10 years where I eventually had to say, well, am I going to really stay here? And just before COVID hit Europe and the US, it was obviously first in China, which I experienced the sort of first wave. And then I said, well, I kind of need to go back home and get back in touch with my Western roots, no matter how much I loved working in China and Korea and Japan. And I came back and started working again in technology and with branding for different agencies and technology solutions providers. I also worked earlier with Spotify and others from the European perspective. And now I'm doing freelance consulting work and working with technology startups now in the twilight of my career. And I really look forward to this discussion today about what kinds of trends are working and what kinds of, especially technology driven marketing applications are out there.
Yeah. Oh, that is such a rich and exciting background that you've had in terms of your experience. And one thing, I mean, just the background, like this is our first time discussing, and I've always just stalked your page, like your commentary on brands and on LinkedIn was what caught my attention. And something you're quite passionate about, and like you mentioned earlier, is brands as an intangible asset that can be valued, that can be measured, and have real financial impact versus just looking at brands from a marketing perspective where you are tracking more superficial trends and matrices versus looking at the whole brand performance holistically as an intangible asset for companies. Yeah, so we're just going to dive right into it. We're talking about trends and trend recap. 2025, I think it was a very exciting year in terms of, yeah, for a lot of things happened. AI, for one, has changed a lot of things. We've seen how it is more and more difficult for trends to be predicted from a consumer perspective. There were surprises from nowhere. There were a few hits and misses in terms of what, we predicted for brand performance during the year or trend performance during the year. And one that we saw significant movement and traction was in the beauty and fragrance industry, in the beauty industry as a whole. There was a lot happening there. What were just your key thoughts, the things that stood out for you the most in that sector?
Yeah, I think one of the trends which I saw, which I didn't see really get written about very much, is kind of a hybrid where two trends actually support each other. So it's sort of like when you drop two stones in the water, you get these ripple effects. And there's like the ripples can actually support each other. And the two key ripples for me were beauty and fitness, and how beauty, for example, got connected with GLP-1s to weight loss. So you can never be too skinny and too rich, is the old sort of adage. And of course, you can never be now too skinny and have too glowing skin
Yeah.
starts to work with each other. And I think what we started to see, especially for 40 plus consumers, was the idea that being skinny and being fit was an essential part of my beauty
Mm.
regimes, and that if I did sports and exercise and I ate properly, this would have this lovely effect. Anti-aging came into effect also with fitness, and suddenly all the fitness and the beauty trend started for me to feel very much the same. What's also fascinating is the use of fragrances, especially body sprays. And I think there's a connection between why you would use a body spray and how it was promoted and your visit to a gym, or the fact that you're part of a running club. So suddenly, when sports becomes more important and more prevalent in your life, and you start doing it more in a group environment, whether you're going to a Pilates class or a calisthenics class, or whether you're running with 50 other people down the street in New York or Paris or what have you, you really do need to smell good. All of a sudden, it becomes much more of a social event. And I think that happened a lot when the aerobics craze started in the 70s and 80s, where people started for those early Reebok days, et cetera, when Nike was taking off. There was this social aspect of sports that kind of disappeared, and now it's coming back
Mm.
uh, at really, really great strength. So I see that sort of beauty and fitness, and I'm wondering if in the future we'll start to actually see beauty products, especially skincare, coming from new superstars like On Running or Vea or Hoka or Asics that are now taking off. And we'll start to see, instead of them worrying about other kinds of accessories, more fashion oriented, if they can look at now at more beauty and wellness.
That is very interesting, and even on a more micro level, there is some TikTok videos that you can see that talk about the perfect fragrance pairing for the gym. So
Yeah,
there is that
yeah.
lifestyle shift in terms of, fragrances for every occasion. And I just want to double click on fragrances particularly because that in within the beauty subsegments in terms of the subcategories and for beauty products, fragrances were one that had lots of traction from an investor perspective, from deal value as well. We saw
Mhm.
some big ones in terms of Kering acquiring Creed, LVMH investing in BDK just some weeks ago, and then also Puig's, growing an aggressive fragrance portfolio. It's one that has gotten a lot of traction. And then also another one I want to get your thoughts on as well is niche fragrancing and the pricing. But then just your thoughts on that. You've talked about earlier about, how it flows into the whole lifestyle. But then from an investment perspective and a subcategory perspective, what are your thoughts on the fragrance industry?
Yeah, so beauty and fragrances are growing faster than fashion, and definitely faster than luxury fashion, especially in the luxury fragrance and skincare area. So I think it was a tremendous mistake for them to have sold it. I know why they sold it. They needed cash. They needed a quick sort of flag in the ground. Look, here's 4 billion, and then we're going to give it to somebody who knows how to run it better than us. But the inability to connect beauty and fashion is a tremendous mistake. It's also similar between the inability for fashion brands to really logically and effectively move into fitness. They've all benefited from it. So LV makes sneakers, Hermes makes sneakers, and this is a great source of high margin, low risk revenues, but they still haven't really gotten it. They still haven't gotten that sort of price points right, and they still haven't really gotten the products right. So if you look at the valuation of On Running and its PE multiple compared to LVMH, it's double. So what's going wrong here, obviously? And of course, when you look at their revenue growth at Asics or earlier at Hoka and at other of these brands, you're starting also to question the ability for fashion to keep up. Oyosho from Inditex, their new fitness is
Going to fitness
awesome.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, there, and it's awesome. And I think luxury brands have tried but never really gotten it right. Puma's been held by Kering in the past. They kind
Mm,
of messed
yeah.
that up. So I understand why Kering got rid of their beauty asset, but it's sad. And I think it's a reflection of their inability to appropriately manage some of their channels and their product development. And I think also with this fitness and beauty area, it's you really have to listen to your customers. The way in which everything is rolled out and interacted and how products are launched, it's Yeah, it's just somehow they've gotten too far away from their customers. And this is something, Fola, that we talked about earlier, is that this focus on celebrity and sponsorships, whether
Mm,
it's F1 or the latest movie star, is really, really distracting them and hurting their businesses,
mm.
no matter how many clicks they get. So these kinds of things is basically like buying media. So when I work with a famous movie star or a K-pop singer, I'm going to get a lot of clicks and engagement, but I'm not going to get a lot of conversion. And I think this is something which now is coming home to roost, which is you've got to start focusing on conversion and how conversions connect not just to sales, but to cash flow.
I, wa-
Maybe
I,
I'm old school that way because cash flow for me is still king.
It is there is some school of thought in terms of the I would say the fashion and luxury purist versus the new generation. I think I saw one of your comments. I think it was on the post on the list, the most recent Chanel collection from Matthew Blasing, the New York show. And I think there was this person that works in the luxury industry, I'm not going to say their name, who made a comment about this is all just hype. The bringing on board of ASAP Rocky as a brand ambassador for a brand that doesn't even do menswear is just chasing hype. And on the other hand, there is a school of thought that says Chanel can't stay in, they can't just stay the tweed brand forever, or the grandma tweed suits forever. They have to modernize and appeal to a younger generation. Where do you stand in that in terms of chasing hype versus appealing to a younger and acquiring more younger consumers?
Yeah. So, I mean, I agree that Chanel has to attract new target audiences, whether they're younger or not. I don't care. I
Mm,
mean, money is money. If they're able to afford the products, if they're able to purchase the products, and it drives cash flows, and they can be converted, whether they're 15 or 75, I don't really care. I don't think their shareholders really care. I mean, these are publicly traded companies, not in the case of Chanel, but definitely in terms of carrying an LVMH. Yes, they need to differentiate themselves. But I think that differentiation starts with, guess what? Products. So you start with the product, you differentiate the product. So Chanel came up with amazing fun things like snowboards and surfboards and got involved in the fitness space, as we discussed, to drive their brand image about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It was brilliant, right? They came up with watches that were made with ceramics
yeah,
instead of gold
I
and silver.
remember
And this
those.
was a kind of like product that made sense, and then it pulled through into product sales. And then you can talk about, do you need ASAP?
Mm, mm.
But he's also way overused. He's with too many different brands. He's
Ah,
classically a performer. So I think it was one of those situations that was kind of a knee-jerk reaction. And for the marketing department, it'll get them the clicks they need. It'll get them a rationalization for why they exist. It's super conservative. And it's kind of ironic that ASAP Rocky becomes like a grandma. He's kind of like the conservative, obvious choice. But that's the way it is. And it's the same thing with Rihanna. And nothing, love her, but there's a time and a place for everything. And I think, again, it's either driving cash flows in the end of the day, or and it isn't. And saying that, oh no, this is just a brand value thing and everything isn't about money. I'm like, oh, what are you talking about?
mm.
Right? This is marketing. Marketing is return on marketing investment, or why are you bothering doing it? I can understand that you create a product that's so lovely and so special that if you experience that product, it changes your view about the brand. I get that more than, oh, we're using this celebrity and it's going to change your view on the
Yeah.
brand, right? And that luxury was always predominantly about started with a product, goes into the sales experience. And I still think when I go to a Brunello Cucinelli store, or when I go to an Hermes store versus going to a Gucci or an LV retail environment, I think there is a difference, and we're starting to see a disconnect. And so that's, for me, the sadness is that a lot of these sort of celebrity collabs just aren't generating the returns they should, and are distracting customers, and is creating this kind of poor performance, I guess, in the end of the day.
Let's get into it. Which ones in 2025 or even in the past 3 years worked, and which ones do you think were just mismatches?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, obviously
Anyone that comes to
it's
mind?
right. So Ralph Lauren, obviously, perfect. Right. So this is an organization that has their flagships, knows where they belong, has secondary retail stores that they own, is able to work with their channels with major department stores, and more importantly, they have a tremendous number of outlets.
Yes.
So they have been able to just sort of moving up into the luxury space while not giving up their outlets. It is crazy. And people, because they're marketing a spot on, because they use things like the polo bear, right? Which other people copy. Like you watch what Boss is doing now with the bear. I'm like, what are you doing? Just basically
Even
pushing.
Burberry also good on
Yeah,
the tech.
Burberry bear. I'm like, you're
It's
just
like,
pushing
but
RL, right? So you're
literally,
late and you're following. It's like you're supposed to come up with your own stuff, gosh. And you have like a British tradition and you have a German tradition, and you're picking up the teddy bear, which has been owned and monetized brilliantly by RL for over 10 years. And now you're going to jump in late in the game. This is just sadness. So yeah, so RL is just
but
gorgeous.
to be fair, UK has Paddington Bear, so maybe
Yeah,
maybe they
but
do
it's
have some claims,
yeah,
but
but
yeah,
it's already there, right? So somebody's got it, and you're obviously copying and picking up Paddington again, who's been picked up and done collabs forever. It's like, come on, we want something special, right? So I think there was an attempt with their knight in shining armor, which I felt is a little bit at
it
least
was a
different.
little too
Which,
much. I thought it was a little
yeah,
too,
a bit much, but at least I had the feeling like it was theirs. It was their creative. It
it
was
was
their
there.
idea,
Yeah, I do
right? And
agree.
that made more sense. Boss had earlier done a lot of, especially with their suits, which unfortunately no longer people don't wear suits anymore,
We
was
don't
sort
have
of made
much.
in Germany possibility. If it works for cars, why not for clothing? They sort of lose a little bit of that, and they've sort of gone off with Beckham, which seemed sort of strange, and then suddenly they're doing Britishness. So all these things seem to clash and feel sort of watered down. And then you look at RL. And you look at the stuff that they did with Martha's Vineyard. You look at the stuff they did with different communities, with not only with Black American culture, but with Native American culture, and
Yeah,
finding things, making this beautiful um, sort of logical effect, and then pushing the Hamptons, and then pushing very, very specific product categories, doing well with the Olympics, keeping it very America focused.
even at
Everything.
Wimbledon, it was surprising. Just cutting there, that it was surprising that even at Wimbledon, they were one of the most visible brands. You would
Yes,
think
because
that the British brands like Burberry would have a stake, but it was Ralph Lauren. They came there with the teddy bear, with the motifs, with the with the preppy dressing, and it was Ralph Lauren that had the most brand visibility, fashion brand visibility in
yeah.
Wimbledon at Wimbledon this year. I am obsessed with Ralph Lauren. I've written about them. I think it's one brand that will be there for the long haul, the
I mean, just
multiple
look,
price points.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
You look at their results. In the end of the day, right? You look at their revenue growth. You look at their cash flow and their net and their operating margins, which grow at faster rates even than their revenue. You look at the transition they had to go through. They got rid of Chaps. They got rid of all these other sub brands that were all crowding up. You look at what they were able to do slowly, carefully. They let their revenues go down and their margins go up, right? Yet they kept the outlet business. And you look at the transition because they were a road wreck 10 years ago. And you look at Kering in the same situation and what Kering is doing versus what they did. Obviously, the current CEO at RL is a dream, right? And the question for me was, why didn't you get the CEO from Ralph Lauren to run Kering? Maybe he didn't want to, maybe he's not a fool. But that was the question for me. Why you didn't get Patrice Levet to take over instead of Mr. DeMeo? I have absolutely no idea what's going on. And now we're just seeing the classic restructuring moves, right out of a BCG or a McKinsey playbook being done by DeMeo. And we'll see some sugar rush returns probably next year, driven by those kinds of restructurings where you're squeezing out cash into the business, but I don't see anything long term being done. So RL is obviously one. Hermes over and over again. I know it's been talked about, but you just look at the results, right? Same thing with Bruno Cucinelli. Same thing. Look at the results. Uniqlo. Look at the results.
yeah.
Inditex. Look at the results.
We spend the whole day talking about Uniqlo, but
Oh,
yeah,
it's
those
consistent, and again, it's there in the results. It's there in their procedures. When you read the Inditex and Uniqlo annual reports, right? You see what the management say, how critical they are of their own business. They're blowing everybody away. You look at Amazon, right, with Jazzy, what he says during his quarterly and annual reports versus the blah blah that comes out of Burberry top management, that comes out of Boss top management, LVMH and Kering management. Your businesses are burning, and you're putting on rose tinted glasses, as opposed to the people who are truly succeeding, who have a very critical approach to their business. It becomes quite obvious.
awesome. I want to just get your thoughts on this and just double clicking on one of particular brands. If you look at, so we talk about Kering, and we know that I think about 60% of the revenue of Kering comes from Gucci. What do you think went wrong? I have a theory about what went wrong with Gucci. I think some of it were macro factors, particularly with trends. But I wanted to get your thoughts on what went wrong, particularly with Gucci.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, Alessandro and Dibichele and his relationship with, I think, I forgot the CEO's name, Butsari, was brilliant. So he had a good relationship with the CEO. It was very product driven and also perfect for the Asian market. Things like having furry slippers. Like Asians very often step on the backs of shoes. So embracing that and creating this sort of slipper mentality, this sort of comfortable shoe vibe, which is tremendously important in the Asian market, which is a brilliance. Keeping the shopping experience consistent, growing that Asian business logically. And then at some point, I think it really got abandoned. And the nurturing and respect for the Asian market started to crumble. The product started to go back more into the catalog. I mean, right now it's really terrible. It's all catalog, back catalog, and conservative again. And so I think this notion of having a unique, clever voice that was based on designs like the bees that they had, and the kind of small iconographic design elements were really great. And for me, Gucci was always about playful, fun, smart design. And now it's all about celebrity. I think at the end, Alessandro Di Michele destroyed what he did by doing a catwalk on the Hollywood Boulevard. That was the beginning of the end for me. And his uh, relationship with Jared Leto just started to get out of control. And it started to be, you know what I mean? There started to be this kind of self indulgence and this delusional thinking that started to really make me sad. And it stopped being a product and a design company, and it started to be a celebrity and a self indulgence. And then we started to discuss, as Nike did, we saw it as well, political issues. I really do not want to get my political point of views from a fashion company. And in the end, those political points of views are interchangeable. They're not being developed by the company. So suddenly I became a virtue signaling company as opposed to a design thinking company. And that's just too easy to copy. And yeah, it just got kind of sad and it fell apart. And again, hate to say it, luxury starts with the product, focuses on the customers, right? And not all the customers who can afford your products. Start there. And I think there was this issue too with the brand recognition and value went up, but it lost contact with the high net worth individuals that drive their business. And I've said this before, and we've discussed it that, for companies like Gucci, they make 80% of their profits from less than 20% of their customers. And they lost touch with those people. And they don't even feature them in their ads. They feature celebrities. I think that people who buy Gucci are more interesting in the celebrity ambassadors that they have in many cases.
Brilliantly said. Yeah,
Mhm.
so when the quiet luxury trend was coming up, I think they just failed to innovate the product and maybe come up with more muted, refined versions of what they already had. It was still very much logomania until it became too late. And then I think in 2024, the 2024 autumn spring collection was when they then tried to come up with like a very pared down, and I was like, nah, this is not you. But it's interesting to see, what happens when you don't focus on the product innovation and you rely more on celebrity hype. It doesn't drive, it doesn't convert,
Yeah.
or it doesn't retain loyalty in the long run.
Yeah. I think quiet luxury is kind of a sad description of what actually happened. So Laura Piano is quality, beautiful colors, saturated colors, muted designs and forms. Uh, this whole notion of how they create cashmere. It's not just cashmere. It is a special kind of a cashmere, the weaves that they use. And so quiet luxury is kind of a riff on certain TV programs and movie trends that suddenly we're now showing the lifestyles of billionaires, and that suddenly became a trend. Also with social media too, where suddenly the lives of billionaires or want to be wealthy are being presented, and it kind of just misses the point when you say quiet luxury as if it were a lifestyle. I think it's really more just about product matters again, right? And that for people that are high net worth individuals, being associated with a TV program or movie isn't really that terribly important. That having luxurious products that are easy to purchase. When you go into a Laura piano store and you like their products, you're in and you're out relatively quickly.
Yeah,
It's not a difficult place to go shopping
yeah,
if you
it is.
want like a tan cashmere coat. If you're worried about the price, you're in the wrong store. And if you're not worried about the price and you like tan and you like cashmere, you're going to walk out in 5 minutes with a jacket, right? The sizing is easy. The same thing with Hermes. If you like silver jewelry or if you like luxurious leathers, you're in and you're out. You might have to wait for the product, but it's pretty simple. When you walk into a Gucci or an LV store, they're so
So
confusing. Am
much.
I buying sneakers? Am I buying um, a cowboy shirt? Am I going in this direction? Am I buying a formal suit or not? And back and forth, and they're just all over the place. And I think that's the issue of quiet luxury should have been like back to quality, back to simplicity. Because if you're not wowing me the way that a Gucci and LV used to do with designs that were new and fresh, not just sentimental and rehashing, which Pharrell does constantly drives me up the wall, you alienate your core customers. And then I'll just go to the Bruno Cucinelli and just life is easier and I get something nice and I'm in and I'm out. There's no discounting at Hermes. There's no discounting at Bruno Cucinelli. There's less discounting finally now at Aro, which is great. And suddenly I'll start seeing Gucci or LV or other brands from their family of products in their houses showing up on discount websites, showing up even on Auto, DE, showing up at TJ Maxx. It's just really sad.
Pivoting a bit more still on in terms of celebrity brands and the ones that were successful. We had a few success stories this year. Rode was one that was, you know, quite successful in terms of the growth and
Mhm.
being able to be valued at $1 billion. I think also, but it was one off. And we've seen other beauty brands that are sponsored by celebrities, being put on the market, but not being able to command the same value. What do you think? Do you think the Road one was more of a fluke? Do you think it was a good decision by Elf to purchase it? Or what are your thoughts on, celebrity beauty brands in general? Are they more of a risky investment?
No, I like celebrity and beauty. It has a lot to do with the commodification of the products. So, do I really think Rhoda products are that much better? I mean, I like some of the application technologies they're using. So Rhoda has kind of a nice profile, and I'm a big fan of how of Kylie Cosmetics and how they're marketing and direct to consumer makes sense with a cosmetic product. You can show people using it. She's a charismatic person, the founder. Same thing with Kylie Cosmetics. So I think that whole connection between social media, social commerce with celebrities for things like lipstick and blush, there's been huge changes in how people apply makeup with these sort of layers and contouring and all of that that goes along with that entire approach. It also works with you can stream and sell at the same time. So there's that whole streaming commerce from Asia that works. And I think all of that there are good case studies. There's plenty of ones that haven't worked, but I think in that, especially for their younger target audience, it's great. I think what the difficulty comes is when you try to take that and move it over into the fashion world, and there, of course, it falls apart totally. And especially when you're not a celebrity brand, but you're an existing brand like a Gucci or an LV, and then you try to, or Burberry, which is for me had tremendous problems using celebrities. Then you start to fall down, especially when those celebrities um, are working with numerous brands like an ASAP that we discussed earlier, who works with over 20 major brands, including Dior and Chanel and all these things where you
Yeah.
just start to say how.
And we can also talk about celebrity collaborations without talking about Kim Kardashian. She's an institution on her own. Just her alone, she had the Nike that came out earlier in the year. She had her Skims collaboration with North Face for a ski collection. She had a collaboration as well with so many sports brands, also being the official US sports team. I mean, she had a good year. I mean, what is it about her? I mean, it's not necessarily about her. Of course, there's a whole machine behind her in terms of, the great family. But then what do you think about her as a brand? And why are many bigger brands, still falling over to collaborate with Kim?
Yeah, I think she has great representation. I think she has a sales machine that's awesome. She partners with really smart people. So the Skims product, right, according to the reviews that I've seen, based on the feedback and the repeat purchasing, her revenues are there, her margins are there. Right, so she's running profitable business. It's the same thing with Kylie Cosmetics. They grew to $1 billion in revenues
Mm.
faster than I've ever seen a cosmetics brand.
Mm.
And post acquisition for Kylie Cosmetics, she stayed with her job. She's still supporting it. Kim as well does a huge number of collaborations, but can you blame her? If people are willing to pay what I'm sure are tremendous fees, more power. And she's obviously gotten results. She has an ability to present her results. She's always underestimated, as she constantly claims. So she has that confidence. She has a track record over and over again. So as far as her ability to sell, I think it makes tremendous sense. And I think she's an example for companies like McKinsey and BCG and others that are now struggling. We've got to say, you've got to start looking at creating brands, creating products. And for WPP Group that's having big problems, they should go looking at Kim Kardashian. How does she create brand driven businesses? Brand driven. She creates brand driven investments and then finds people to invest in her perspective and to invest in her community. So I get all of that. The problem is the person on the other side.
Mm.
Right. So there have been some sort of more of mid-range. She'll do like partnerships with Cavalli that nobody will ever remember, or she'll get paid up big. And so I think there again, the Nike skims, I'm not, we'll see what happens, proof in the pudding, but ugh, it's just so, yeah, no, I
Yeah.
love her and I love what she does. And I think she's also a great example for women getting it done on your own,
Mm.
being you know, underestimated and then kicking ass and doing it your way and finding the right people around you to lift you up. So yeah. So I mean again, I wish that people could have the discipline and focus on cash as she does to
Mm.
deliver it, as opposed to these mediocre, poor investments that other brands make.
They're doing. Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. And just on in terms of overall where we see where brands still miss it in terms of where they don't know the customers, what is kind of like if you look at the biggest blind spots that most brands have, we've talked about the one of, not focus on losing focus on the product, throwing money at endorsements versus, developing the brand. Where do you think brands still miss it the most,
Yeah. I
in
think
terms of knowing their customers?
yeah. So I think what brands have been doing is they've been spending way too much time with Google, spending way too much time with Meta, right? And YouTube just been printing cash. No matter how bad Google search is, search engine marketing and optimization is such a scam, and they keep following. They're getting from their media planning agencies, they're getting really, really bad information, right? So the ability to track and to plan media, especially over the common large digital, like top 50 digital marketing platforms, is just pathetic, right? When you look at what organizations like a Tencent are doing or an Amazon is doing for their own business, it's phenomenal. And then you look at what the brands are doing and they're all suffering. So they're basically just falling prey to more or less scams from Google and Meta, uh, or Snap or whoever it happens to be at the time. And I think that's going to continue. And AI is just going to be an extension of it too. They're just going to get they're just going to be financing somebody else's business model. And that's just a shame. And then what they're not doing is talking to their customers, launching products with their customers, aggregating demand, launching products with aggregated demand. No, you can't. The technology is out there. Social commerce is about working together with your customers, right? Not about a K-pop star featured in one of your streams. This is just really, really sad. And what they're doing is, why do you have to turn to third parties to understand your customers, especially with all the tools and all the investments you make in tech, and you still have to talk with Google to understand what your customers are doing? And that's just sadness. And it's about, I mean, there was the whole issue again with Nike that with their attempt to take back their direct to consumer was a smart idea. And it just, the question was the company sticking with it? Was then the product development being connected to all these new DTC capabilities? The answer was no. But having that strength to DTC now going back to wholesalers is ridiculous. Margins are worse. Understanding of the customer base gets diluted when you start selling through Foot Locker or what have you. And again, look at the people like the RLs and the Hermeses and the others and the Uniqlos that are successful because they understand and work with their customers. They create products that are based on it. That's where it all starts. And then the marketing, even though I'm a marketing and branding guy, it just comes on top. It enhances an insight. It doesn't create an insight. And I think that's what's happening too much is all these celebrity collabs. They're attempting to create desire, to create demand instead of to understand the existing demand and desire, to truly understand what's going on in the culture and then push it. They talk about culture as if it's the culture that they can sponsor. Drives me crazy. And not in that the fact that brands aren't internally discussing what does culture mean? Where should our research come? So some of the best research I see now is coming from insurance companies.
Tell me
Companies
more
like
about that.
AXA and Stada. Well, so recent research from AXA and Stada show that consumers are more concerned about social tensions than they are about ESG.
Oh,
So they look at risks and so AXA just comes out with a report in 2025. Stada is a pharmaceutical company, by the way. They come out also with their issues, and people are concerned about their health and wellness more. They're concerned about social issues, that there's a bifurcation in culture, and they're not so concerned about ESG or DEI anymore. And they
mm,
haven't been for some time. It's people are concerned that people are fighting all the time and not listening, that people are getting isolated, don't contact. Could brands look at that? Sure, they could, but it's certainly a whole lot easier to find a movie star or find an athlete or Formula One or the World Cup, and they can sit in the front row, as opposed to saying, gee, people are hurting and feeling bad or scared of inflation. What are we going to do? That's what the real research is showing, as opposed to La Boo Boo. La Boo Boo, remember? It's like, yeah, somebody kicked your butt and it wasn't you. And then you're going to embrace the thing that should highlight. Again, product
yeah,
driven, customer understanding. Labubu has all these blind boxes. They understand consumers. They spend years and years and years. It's a brilliant company, Chinese company, that's behind Labubu. And they ignored all of that. And what do? Oh, we need to make something to hang from our bags too. You just go, no, no. It's about, they have retail
Probably
experiences.
it is a psychology because I also wrote about Labubu, and for me it was just a masterclass in mining consumer behavior and social behavior.
And
The
fun. People wanted
Yeah,
fun. The whole blind box concept was the idea that you bought something you didn't know, and then you went online and you traded with people. And if you've been
yeah,
to
and
one of their stores,
there's a Pokemon psychology as well. You have to collect them
yeah,
all. There was a collectability. There's a surprise factor.
right,
I
but that
mean,
all went like this. So did we all of a sudden see people saying you can order a bag
back charms are
from
the
from
way.
from Gucci and you give us $5,000 and maybe you'll get a $20,000 bag. Maybe you'll get a $5,000 bag. Ooh, or maybe you get a $2,000 bag. Nothing. No
Nothing.
play, no
I saw
gamification, nothing.
$500 cherry bag charm from Gucci, and I'm just like, nice try. Nice try.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
this is what makes me crazy. It just seems like somebody was reading a trend report from BCG, and then they sort of said, "Oh yeah, no, we have to do this, and we have to," and you're just like, just dig. And I think that's why I was so happy to hear that you work for Alex Partners, because I think that's an organization that it digs, and that it's time for people to stop following trends, take your time, slow it down, start to dig.
Mm,
Find something that differentiates yourself. Find some kind of a lag or a gap in the market that you can
mm,
own. And again, I
yeah.
think this is what Hermes does by constantly showing their workshops,
Yeah.
constantly showing their ateliers. They talk
Yeah.
about, I mean, look at their social media, they talk about the people that work for the
Wow.
company,
Yes.
right? They talk about these special stitches. They talk about plants that they support that need to be grown to make their products. And it's a level of detail. And
Yeah.
that is something that they groom and carefully enable. And I think the key thing for me with brands is brands make choices easier, right? So I don't have, but when I go to Hermes, I can trust that brand. It makes, when I go into the store, it's easy for me to make choices. And this is again for a high net worth individual. We always talk about how time is important, but make their lives easier, make things more comfortable and warm, or go the other direction, embrace ugly, like the whole ugly sneaker trend, which was great for luxury, where we said, surprise us, give us things that make us feel uncomfortable. This is also the issue of art as being something that challenges us. So you've either got to go into the make my life luxuriously soft and easy, or challenge me to think in new ways. But this sort of mediocre copy and paste middle, it just seems sad.
And that's a very good one because I think where brands get very lazy is that they focus on the trend itself versus the underlying factors or changes that make people go for the trend. So Labubu for me is a symptom of something. People are bored, people want fun, they want fun in fashion, but then at a particular price point. They want that social proof. They want social interaction because nobody's buying a Labubu just to keep. They want to show it on social media. Oh, I got this one in my collection. And it also means something when you're wearing it out there. But that for me is more of a symptom, of something underlying. And that is what they need to dig behind. What is driving this? How can I make our product more fun versus just like, okay, it's back charms. Let's go with back charms or let's just have toys. And I think that's where, consumer behavior and consumer psychology is becoming more and more important in brands, particularly luxury brands, and understanding who their customers are and really just how things are changing. Um, we're almost on time. I had a question to ask you. Do you think management consultants are getting their hands too much? and are spoiling the fun with all their
No,
reports.
I'm just so impressed at how management consultants have been able to steal the top businesses and get paid so much more than agencies right now.
Yeah,
They are just the what BCG and McKinsey and other consultants have been able to get from brand consulting contracts and how much they get paid compared to advertising agencies or the WPP group. Forget about it. How Google, as we talked about, or Meta is taking over the whole media planning discussion and just making bucket loads of money as the media planners get less and less. Oh
yeah,
boy. Yeah, somebody's business model is broken. So yeah, I think that, the fact that McKinsey can write about fashion is just an example of how good they are at marketing. I don't want to get in. I mean, obviously, the people that they consult, and we can have a discussion about, gee, how good is that all gone? But yeah, I am tremendously impressed at their ability to get involved with with brand strategy consulting.
yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely impressed.
I have my thoughts as well, but not not
But it's like
specific.
with Kim Kardashian, like I'm not going to take away from her success. Now we can have
Yeah,
a discussion about
absolutely.
should people be buying or not. But again, I'm not a moralist. I'm not a sociologist. It works. She's gangster. She gets her cash. McKinsey also super gangster. They always figure out a way. They'll do the same thing with AI. AI is a tool. If you think it's magic dust, great, go work with a consultant. It's a tool just like getting information that you ignore from your
Yeah,
own e-shop, right?
yeah.
You get information about your customers. You have a sales team that you're ignoring. You want to go use AI instead of talking to your sales team? Good luck with that. You
Mm.
can use AI to aggregate the feedback from your sales force, but AI isn't
Isn't your
feedback from
self
your sales
worth?
force. It isn't feedback from your customers. If you can get an AI to talk to your top 10% customers and get really, really good feedback, great. But by the way, you should be doing that already. Ignoring your customers, ignoring your sales staff, not making the most out of your CRM. I mean, again, Salesforce did a great job back in the day, helping people to get back in touch with their customers. Love what Salesforce did. Now, can they go to the next level? Because I get the feeling that the kind of the marketing campaigns and the choice of celebrities or sponsorship is not based on some kind of direct research that was first done with customers, asking them, we can sponsor 5 big sporting events. Which one do you want us to sponsor? Why is not part of it? This notion of testing and interacting should be what AI can do. AI can produce products that you can show to your customers, and you can say, hey, would you like us to produce this product, or this product? We can aggregate your demand and then produce based on demand, helping the environment, get you special cool products that are limited editions. Absolutely not. So AI is this way for me to not use as much staff as opposed to finding incredible cool new ways to launch new products or get to newness, because that's the other thing which I think is incredibly important for luxury. It's both traditional and quality, but how does newness fit in? That's where AI can help you. That's where AI can prototype, as long as, again, how do we produce it? Who's it made for? Bring all of that in. And that's what the Chinese are able to do with Shein or Temu, short batch productions, quick reactions to what consumers want. So Shein is all about reacting to what people want. And that's, for me, the hope. And if you don't make things that people want or don't make things that people go, wow, what are you doing?
I mean, there's so many things. We're definitely going to have another conversation because Shein is also another, but I respect the business model. They are, for me, I think they are like Zara on steroids without the
Yeah,
ethics.
faster, faster.
Zara on steroids without the ethics because they are just copy. They copy. They go, they mine the internet. They look at where the clicks are. They look at where the attention is, and they just copy.
Right. And
There's no need.
they work with the manufacturers and they take
Yeah.
out the brand. So this is the great thing, is that Shein has relationships directly with the manufacturers. They help manufacturers better plan and better produce. So
Mhm.
Shein doesn't make, and Shein doesn't create demand. People want cheap
People
products.
want,
Yeah.
and they
And
pay
they
attention to that. Aggregated data and know what to produce. Yeah.
and Shein, when I did some work with them and they showed me some of the research, they said the number one reason why people shop on Shein, according to a study which is available on their website and it seems to be ignored by everybody, is people say, when I go to Shein, I find things I can't find other places, because they give you access. And what the factories do through this copying process is they mutate, they morph, they come up with a t-shirt with a funny, sometimes misspelling X, Y, and Z. And every now and then they hit. So they're able to present hundreds and hundreds of products to consumers. The two or three that are most successful will then be amplified. The ones that aren't get pulled away. And then they rinse, wash, and repeat. So they're constantly pushing products, pushing products, pushing products, enabling innovation, working directly with the factories, take
Mm,
out the brand. And this allows this kind of an ability to find pricing, to find products that people want, and this lovely amplification. And you just don't understand why luxury brands won't do this. And
mm,
you do it with a smaller group, you do it more intelligently, but there aren't this notion of how do you bring your shoppers into the product launch and product development process. And somehow Shein does it because take out the brand. And what they basically did is they allowed customers to interact with factories. Now, the fact that it was done for low cost, environmentally destructive products is the problem. But why can't we use that? Why can't Shein start to do what they do, but for quality responsible products? And I think that's what they're looking at, by the way, now. And I'm hoping over time that Shein and its methodology can be used for responsible products, higher
mm.
quality products, instead of just for cheap and cheerful. And there's an issue of taxation and why governments haven't been sort of restricting some of these practices. But we can get into that in another
Can get
discussion.
into that. And that's such a brilliant observation. And just to wrap up on one last question, what trend, but either technology, in terms of technology usage, are you most excited to see in the future?
Oh, I'm excited to see what happens with Skinny. Skinny is really complicated. So 12% of Americans, I guess, take GLP-1s right now. That is insanity, right? It's being paid for by often by our healthcare system, or the rates are there. When you look at the numbers, so Novo Nordisk, so the original pioneer for the GLP-1s, comes from Denmark. About 1% of all Danish people take GLP-1s. So why is 12% of America, the gigantic country that America is, with the difficulties we have with healthcare systems and costs and payment, and for a fraction of the cost, and with a much more, this is Denmark we're talking about, a much more stable, smaller culture, the inventors of them, it's such a fraction. So I think this has a lot to do with social issues. The Danish are really big into sports. So I think this sort of issue of being skinny, what that means as a benchmark for beauty, where that will go, I think is going to continue. It's not really just a health issue. Yes, of course, being skinnier as opposed to being obese destroys everything in your body. Right. So if you stop being obese, you can get rid of all these diseases. So now they're like, oh, you can take it for everything. Yeah. Being skinny is probably a better idea than being obese, but there's something in between there. And I think it also reflects something about where our culture is going to. We talked before about social media and other digital technologies making people less intelligent, and that needs to be discussed, and how and why that occurs, and what restrictions should we have, like we start seeing in New Zealand with stopping children, or in China where there's restrictions on the use of social media, and starting to say, what happens with that? What
Hmm.
happens with skinny? Is this really an intelligent approach? Is this really a logical development of our culture where suddenly being skinny becomes such a tremendous issue? And worst of all, for especially for actors and actresses that I loved and respected, like a Nicole Kidman or other people, starting to see which way they go with this sort of body politic. And I think it's kind of a reflection or a canary in a coal mine for where our culture is going. And I would keep an eye out for skinny.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think no other industry will benefit from this more than both the fashion and also the wellness industry. There's just going to be more spin-offs in fitness, in food. We saw that in food as well. If you look at, so for example, the David protein bar that got an instant valuation just within how many years of months of sales. We're going to see a lot more that in food, in fitness, in wellness, and fashion. And the fashion one interests me so much because it is always, there's always just such a social cultural undertone to the politics of what our bodies look like. And now that there is quote unquote no excuse for being obese anymore, really, because yeah, just get GLP. It's just going to change our fashion trends. And one thing I also see in terms of prediction on what I could see is we would start having some nostalgia from the 90s as well and the early 2000s where skinny was mainstream and all of that fashion choices that goes with having a leaner body, like the 90s minimalism that we saw. I think that would come on. But from a fashion trend perspective, I think that's something that we may see. Um, Coincidentally, Hollywood reproducing, the lifestyle of the Kennedys and Caroline Bessette. And she stands for something. She stands for a particular aesthetic of a woman. I think we're going to see that, that minimalism and focus on body shape more than the outfit itself.
Cosmetic surgery will also
Aesthetic.
continue to grow. So I think we can see the opportunity really in two ways. So either we're going to go back to this skinny, artificial surgery, the use of legal drugs, which are super dangerous, whether it's a version of ketamine or other things, because the pharmaceutical industry can generate happy pills, which they're already doing now on a regular basis, whether it's using THC based products or what have you. And then this is sort of push towards protein because you're not eating proper meals anymore. The sad thing that happened, though, of course, with the luxury industry is they started looking at things like macaroons and Michelin star restaurants. It's like, nah, that's not what people want. They want protein bars, they want feel good pills, they want to be skinny. And so you didn't see a collaboration between LV and Novo Nordisk or Lilly, which probably should have happened. You didn't see Gucci and no, I'm serious. They should have. They you have hims and hers did it, but with all this money and supposed brain power behind El Cateran, the investment arm of LVMH and others, where were they with the whole GLP-1 space? How did they miss that? So I think we're going to start to see these things come together. There will also probably be a backlash, right? So maybe we start to see taking GLP-1s disables you from appreciating food. It disables you from appreciating sex. It disables you from appreciating a lot of things in life. So we might see actually a shift back in the other direction. This could be led by the luxury brands who would say, stop the madness. Life isn't a protein shake and not eating and taking a happy pill. How could that be the purpose of your millions or billions? So we'll start to see which way it shifts. And that's, I think, something that I miss from Dolce and Gabbana, which sort of took that crazy sort of skinny drugs party, sort of the sort of romantic Studio 54 approach, and they flipped it and they made fun of it. Same thing with Moschino, which made fun of it. So I think there's going to be some interesting opportunities, but I think if you're not leaning into skinny, superficial, all these kinds of like disco era um, traits and attributes, you're missing it. And I think you need to have a point about it as opposed to worrying about the environment, because saving the environment is basically who owns the environment, who owns land, rich people.
Mm.
So I understand why high net worth individual people want to save the planet because they own it. Right. If I'm a working mom in a major city like New York, just struggling to get by, should I really worry about the environment? Because it's not mine. I don't live on the coast. So why should I save the coast when I'm either not a poor worker in Indonesia or a super wealthy person in LA, right, on the coast? So yeah, I think we'll start hopefully to see discussions back into what is beauty again. I think that's a fabulous discussion. So skinny's there. And let's go back to beauty. Let's look at what health means, but let's bring some dynamic to it. Let's bring some cleverness to it like we used to have in the 90s. That kind of irony, critical thinking. I think people are ready for it. I think that's in a scary way Trump is successful because he's kind of nihilistic. He's ironic in his way. He's a bad person, but he says, look, we're all bad. And I'm just bad in this direction. Stop believing that the liberals are good. So you're starting to get this kind of aggressive, critical, questioning, a little bit more tearing, as opposed to what we saw when luxury was flying, which was, it's a beautiful world. Let's all help each other. It's all going to be fine. No, I think that's over. I think
Yeah.
that's over.
Yeah. Oh, amazing, amazing. Any last words, anything you want to just throw in before we haven't talked about?
Yeah, no, we talked before about due diligence, and I
Hmm.
wanted to get your opinion on where you think forensic due diligence and due diligence has gone, whether we're talking about branding or business planning or other things. What do you think about the state of critical thinking and due diligence?
I think from a and not to talk down on consultants and our play and our playbook and how we go about things, but I think there is a tendency to just go with a template most of the time, and then you kind of miss the discipline of what is the secret sauce of this business, right? And what are the areas that we need to preserve in terms of what drives the most value? And sometimes we miss that. If we take everything together, for some brands, it may just be the supply chain. They have excellent supply chain, their speed to the market is fast. For some brands, it may even be intangible things like the marketing. They have a strong community, but then if you're not careful in placing value on what really drives the business. You just go in with a playbook, your value, you're assessing everything with, okay, they have, should have, and then you're using benchmarks. I'm a consultant and we do this a lot, but I really, really cringe when we bring out our benchmark matrices and we try to calibrate it to some industries sometimes to say, oh, you should have this size or team, but taking a step back to look at what is the value proposition of this business, what is the brand, what is the positioning, what is the customer's perception of this business, particularly for B2C companies that have consumer products. And if you take that outside of your diligence evaluation, you would miss the key value drivers of the business. And sometimes you don't protect that. So it could just be, oh, we're gonna have a company that focuses so much on community engagement, and they have a headcount that is skewed more in their, or their spend more on social media, for example. And then we use our benchmark to say, oh, you're spending, you're not getting enough value, and then oh, we're gonna cut costs on that. We're gonna get some synergies on that. You take that away, but it was really community engagement that was driving a lot of the, the brand value and the sales, and you miss that because you've used a benchmark. So that's my
No, I love
risk.
that. And I love that you use special sauce, which is really understanding what the special sauce is and then protecting it and evolving it. I think that's something where, for example, Lululemon has exactly what you discussed. So Lululemon
Yeah,
had the community. They were doing community-based sales, community-based product development. They had that special sauce. And then as they got bigger and more international, somehow they lost it.
yeah,
And now they just cut away a lot of that and they start acting like so yeah.
yeah.
Now I hope maybe in the future we can have a discussion about what is special sauce, how do you
Mm,
define it, and how do
definitely.
you not kill it, even when the company needs to update their special sauce as opposed to throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
No, I love that. We're definitely gonna have another conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and
Hey,
maybe it
thank
was
you
your
so much. So
voice.
much fun.
Maybe it was your voice where you put little Louis to sleep, like he's just like,
Louis, yeah, Louis was my inspiration. I felt his vibe, and without Louis, this would have never been possible.
yeah, he's just sound asleep. So thank you so much for your time on this episode. We're looking forward to just sharing this and publishing this, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Paula. I look forward to doing it. I'll send you an email and we can discuss some additional topics maybe for next
Definitely,
year.
definitely. Enjoy
And
the
have
rest of
great
your day.
holidays. You
You too.
too.
Bye.
Bye bye.